Good morning, YouTube. I have to say I'm sorry for not putting out a video yesterday or the day before, as I said I was going to. I've been kind of trying to figure out how I wanted to cover the topic that I want to talk about today. And that topic would be feelings. I know it sounds like something kind of juvenile or something kind of childish, but it's something that we as people sometimes forget that we have, even though they're in our everyday lives, or you're male, female, whatever. But in this case, I more or less want to talk about men and their feelings. So, I've been through a lot of sociology classes. That's my minor, and one of my classes that I took was a sociology of reproduction class. And I was one of like three people, not three people, but one of three men that actually took that class. And I had noticed about halfway through about the second week that the entire class was catering to females. And I understood it. I had a female professor. There was a lot more females in the classroom. And I kind of stood up and made a point. I had told my professor that there's two sides to every story. There's men's feelings just as well as there's female feelings, and when it comes to sociology of reproduction, that covers a lot of childbirth and abortions and this and that. I'm not going to get into my feelings on that portion of it all, but what I was getting at is that in this class, nobody was taking into consideration the man side of things, the masculinity side of things. I mean, men come in different walks of life, shapes, forms, whatever. You know, you've got big guys, little guys, tall guys, short guys, whatever. And some of us are a little bit more hard, some of us are a little bit more soft, some of us are a little bit more in touch with our feminine side, some of us aren't. But at the end of the day, as a man, and something that I've learned over the course of, well, my lifetime, is sometimes I get wrapped up in my feelings and not expressing them. And what I mean by not expressing them is I'm not letting people know exactly how I feel. I'm letting people... Hold on, let me fix this a little bit. Sorry, and anyways, I got my office back up together. But, I don't express my feelings in a ginger nature. If I get mad, I'll start screaming, or I'll do whatever it is that I feel like doing when I'm mad, when I'm sad. I'll curl up inside myself and just won't let it out. And the fact of the matter is that's not healthy. It's not healthy for you, it's not healthy for your partners, whether you're with another woman, with another guy, whatever. It doesn't matter. We need to be in touch with our feelings, and the best thing that we can do, and one of the things that I've learned, especially in my marriage with my wife, Carissa, is that if I open up my feelings and tell her how I feel, I don't have to get to that point where if I'm mad, I have to start screaming or yelling. I might raise my voice, but it's not nearly as bad when I'm able to sit there and actually voice to my significant other and say, look, this is kind of how I'm feeling right now. You know, and we actually sit down and talk about it. And, I mean, I'd have Chris here today, but he's dealing with some personal stuff too. I'm not going to dig into that. But, and I'll leave that for him to kind of get into when he decides to get involved. It probably won't be till after the holiday season, to be honest. But I want to talk about feelings in that aspect of, you know, a lot of times we hide from our feelings as men. Some women do it too. Some women are more attuned with their feelings and easier to voice them and stuff like that. Whereas men, we kind of forget that we have them. We end up going into what I like to call robot mode. And it's where we have to take care of everything else around us. And it feels like we've got the entire weight of the world on our shoulders. And you kind of get into that suffocated mode where you really don't know what to do other than express the feelings that you're having in the most crude of forms. Rather than voicing it, we express it through body language, through yelling, screaming, throwing stuff, whatever. And the fact of the matter is your feelings are valid, if you get what I'm saying here. You know, if you're going through a rough time with your spouse, there's nothing wrong with turning around and saying, look, I'm just kind of sad about something, and talk about it. Get it off your chest. I mean, a lot of this gets brought up because I've got a 2-year-old son, and he's watching a lot of Daniel Tiger and stuff like that, and they talk about feelings and stuff, and I got to thinking, really, that it's a good thing, number one, that they're teaching that to kids to express themselves and just say, hey, I'm mad, instead of yelling, screaming, and throwing a temper tantrum. But it also works for us as adults, too. Because if we don't communicate, then we're not going to get very far in life. And yes, words are just 10% of our communication method. The rest of it's all body language. But what if we could cut back on the hazardous thought process of these feelings? What if we could voice these feelings and talk about them without having to get to that point of anger and throwing stuff or yelling or screaming or anything like that? You know, I think that would cut down on a lot of issues with workplaces, friends, family, stuff like that. You know, one of the things I've learned, I have a really good friend of mine back in Vegas. One of the things I had to learn with him was just to be upfront and honest about feelings and thought processes and stuff like that. If something came portrayed over a text message and it sounded a little rough, you know, I wasn't afraid to voice it and say, look, dude, that didn't sound quite right. I'm not quite agreeing with you on this, you know, or whatever. And we would talk it out instead of, you know, having that spat with each other. But what I'm really trying to get at is that men's feelings are there, and this is more of a message for partners and stuff like that don't take feelings into consideration, because a lot of times we as people forget that men have feelings, because we do go into robot mode, because we do have to sit down there and think about and contemplate things, especially if you're one of those guys that really encourages your wife to be able to be that stay-at-home mom. So you're taking all of the responsibilities of the outside and you're internalizing them instead of putting it on two people's shoulders, you know? One of the things I've learned is that you just kind of need to have that other person to help carry that weight. And as men, we need to stop trying to put all the weight on our shoulders and start dispersing it out a little bit and helping each other out. Because when it comes to friends, we've all been through situations, and we've all been through different situations and done different things in regards to those same situations, if you get what I'm saying. So, you know, because somebody might end up going through homelessness. That's one of them. You know, and that's a pretty angry, frustrating time. You know, you don't know where you're going, you don't know what you're doing, you're couch surfing. It's all about, where do I go next? Am I going to be in this location for a couple days, a week, a month, a year? You know, or am I going to be gone in a few hours, a day, a week, a month, a year? You know, and everybody handles situations differently. I know quite a few friends of mine have ended up homeless, just like me. I ended up homeless, right before graduation, right after I went to basic training. My dad had hinted off to me that his home was not a location for me to be at, so I ended up moving over to a friend's house, and they took me in. I consider myself homeless through that time, even though I had a friend's house to go to crash at. But it still wasn't my home, if you get what I'm saying, you know. And there was no telling how long it was going to be before I pissed off my friend's family and they didn't want to deal with me anymore because I wasn't part of their family. Or right after graduation, the day after I graduated, my mom was on the plane back to her home. My dad had kicked me out of the house again. And I'm not afraid to give you this information because it was about 6 months ago, the last contact I had with my father, sitting down on my son's birthday and sitting at a table at a nice Greek restaurant, and my dad actually started bragging about how he kicked me out of the house after graduation to his new stepson, and kind of giving the whole, you should be glad I don't treat you like I did my own son. And that's why you probably won't hear me talking about any recent events with my father. My father and I do not get along, and frankly I don't want anything to do with him. With a family member like that in my life, I don't need enemies, put it that way. But my dad kicked me out of the house at 18 years, well, I was 17 and a half, and I had been to basic training and I didn't have the means to get back in the Army, I'll put it that way. My unit had been disbanded and they had moved to a different state, and at that point in time I had not been job qualified, so going to my one weekend a month was just kind of a waste of time because they didn't have anything for me to do. Even my commander kind of said, there's no real reason for you to show up. I had gone to 2 drills. So I got kind of lost, I was 18 years old, got kicked out of my house. I had 1 week to get my stuff out of the house, and all I could take with me was what I could carry, essentially. I ended up moving in with another one of my best friends and her family for a few months while I was trying to figure out life, and then ended up going to an ex-girlfriend's house and living with her and her family for a while. And I'm still very grateful that they were able to take me in. I was the one who screwed up that situation. But what I was getting at is, everybody that goes through homelessness or any kind of big major event has feelings. And a lot of times we as people don't take the feelings of another person into consideration when we're talking to them, when we make a decision, when we go the route that we want to go in life. And once you can kind of establish that you're one of those people that's not taking somebody else's feelings into consideration, or even not taking your own feelings into consideration, that can be very, very dangerous. Because a lot of times when you're not taking your own personal feelings into consideration, we end up getting lost into vices. Whether that vice is smoking weed, doing heroin, doing coke, drinking, stuff like that. That's not where we need to be putting our energies. Where we need to be putting our energies and our focus is feeling those emotions, establishing these emotions, and figuring out how to be the solution to the problem rather than add to the problem itself. One of the things I do when I come up with when a problem or a situation arises in my life is I like to internalize and sit down and think about it. And a lot of times, and a lot of people do this. I'm not alone in this aspect, and I know I'm not. But a lot of people internalize it, and they forget to bring it out to the surface. And one of the things I've learned is to talk to my friends. I talk to people, and I get their advice on the situation that's going on in my life, and figure out their perspective of things, and try to be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. And that's one of the key things I want people to, or I want you guys to think about throughout this video, is how to be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. If you have a drinking problem, a lot of times you don't want to admit that you have a drinking problem. But we need to look at the people around us and figure out if it's negatively affecting the people around us. I don't have a drinking problem, but I do know people who do. You know, if you have a problem with internalizing, then you need to establish that communication frequency with your significant other or your close friends and talk to them about it. Tell them what's going on in your life, because chances are they might be able to help. They have a different perspective that you can tap into and possibly just get advice. I mean, if you're homeless, you don't have to ask your friends for a place to stay, but you can ask for advice on where to go or what resources are available to you, knowing that you are in that situation. Because the fact of the matter is, there are resources for people that are homeless, for people that are dealing with anger issues, for people that are dealing with depression, for people who are dealing with post-traumatic stress. And unfortunately, when it comes to post-traumatic stress, depression is oftentimes looped into that. As one of those people that kind of deals with my own personal internal issues as far as post-traumatic stress, I know that sometimes I get depressed, and one of the things that I do is I talk to my wife about it. It takes me a while, but I do. I end up talking to my wife about it, or I'll talk to my mom about it. I mean, luckily enough for me, I have those resources. But I want to let you guys know that if you don't have those resources, I can be one of those resources that you can talk to. I am looking into setting up a Twitter account for my subscribers and followers and stuff like that, to give them an outlet to talk. Give you an open forum to where you can either talk to me or you can talk to other people about your issues, and maybe we can help. Maybe we can just help you look from a different perspective and help you wrangle up those feelings and understand the feelings rather than express the feelings, if that makes any sense. So just remember one thing, guys. I'm in the business of making friends. Are you?